This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Mark Nelson. Omnilingual by H. Beam Piper. Part 5. She was halfway through the 5th floor a week later, and was having midday lunch in the reading room on the 1st floor when Hubert Penrose came over and sat down beside her, asking her what she was doing. She told him. "I wonder if you could find me a couple of men for an hour or so," she added. "I'm stopped by a couple of jammed doors at the central hall, lecture room and library, if the layout of that floor is anything like the ones below it." "Yes, I'm a pretty fair doorbuster myself." He looked around the room. "There's Jeff Miles. He isn't doing much of anything. And we'll put Sid Chamberlain to work for a change, too. The 4 of us ought to get your doors open." He called to Chamberlain, who was carrying his tray over to the dishwasher. "Oh, Sid, you doing anything for the next hour or so?" "I was going up to the 4th floor to see what Tony's doing." "Forget it. Tony's bagged his season limit of Martians. I'm going to help Martha bust in a couple of doors. We'll probably find a whole cemetery full of Martians." Chamberlain shrugged. "Why not? A jammed door can have anything back of it, and I know what Tony's doing. Just routine stuff." Jeff Miles, the Space Force captain, came over, accompanied by one of the lab crew from the ship who had come down on the rocket the day before. "This ought to be up your alley, Mort," he was saying to his companion. "Chemistry and physics department. Want to come along?" The lab man, Mort Tranter, was willing. Seeing the sights was what he'd come down from the ship for. She finished her coffee and cigarette, and they went out into the hall together, gathered equipment, and rode the elevator to the 5th floor. The lecture hall door was the nearest. They attacked it first. With proper equipment and help, it was no problem, and in 10 minutes they had it open wide enough to squeeze through with the floodlights. The room inside was quite empty, and like most of the rooms behind closed doors, comparatively free from dust. The students, it appeared, had sat with their backs to the door, facing a low platform, but their seats and the lecturer's table and equipment had been removed. The 2 side walls bore inscriptions. On the right, a pattern of concentric circles, which she recognized as a diagram of atomic structure, and on the left, a complicated table of numbers and words in 2 columns. Tranter was pointing at the diagram on the right. "They got as far as the Bohr atom, anyhow," he said. "Well, not quite. They knew about electron shells, but they have the nucleus pictured as a solid mass. No indication of proton and neutron structure. I'll bet when you come to translate their scientific books, you'll find that they taught that the atom was the ultimate and indivisible particle. That explains why you people never found any evidence that the Martians used nuclear energy." "That's a uranium atom," Captain Miles mentioned. "It is?" Sid Chamberlain asked excitedly. "Then they did know about atomic energy. Just because we haven't found any pictures of A-bomb mushrooms doesn't mean—" She turned to look at the other wall. Sid's signal reactions were setting away from him again. Uranium meant nuclear power to him, and the 2 words were interchangeable. As she studied the arrangement of the numbers and words, she could hear Tranter saying, "Nuts, Sid. We knew about uranium a long time before anybody found out what could be done with it. Uranium was discovered on Terra in 1789 by Klaproth." There was something familiar about the table on the left wall. She tried to remember what she had been taught in school about physics and what she had picked up by accident afterward. The 2nd column was a continuation of the 1st. There were 46 items in each item numbered consecutively. "Probably used uranium because it's the largest of the natural atoms," Penrose was saying. "The fact that there's nothing beyond it there shows that they hadn't created any of the transuranics. A student could go to that thing and point out the outer electron of any of the 92 elements." 92. That was it. There were 92 items in the table on the left wall. Hydrogen was number 1, she knew. 1, Sarfaldsorn. Helium was 2. That was Tyrfaldsorn. She couldn't remember which element came next, but in Martian it was Sarfaldavas. Sorn must mean matter or substance then, and Davas. She was trying to think of what it could be. She turned quickly to the others, catching hold of Hubert Penrose's arm with one hand and waving her clipboard with the other. "Look at this over here," she was clamoring excitedly. "Tell me what you think it is. Could it be a table of the elements?" They all turned to look. Mort Tranter stared at it for a moment. "Could be. If I only knew what those squiggles meant." That was right. He'd spent his time aboard the ship. "If you could read the numbers, would that help?" she asked, beginning to set down the Arabic digits and their Martian equivalents. "It's decimal system, the same as we use." "Sure. If that's a table of elements, all I'd need would be the numbers. Thanks," he added, as she tore off the sheet and gave it to him. Penrose knew the numbers and was ahead of him. 92 items numbered consecutively. The first number would be the atomic number, then a single word, the name of the element, then the atomic weight. She began reading off the names of the elements. "I know hydrogen and helium. What's Tyrfaldavas, the third one?" "Lithium," Tranter said. "The atomic weights aren't run out past the decimal point. Hydrogen's 1 plus, if that double-hook dingus is a plus sign. Helium's 4 plus. That's right. And lithium's given as 7. That isn't right. It's 6.904. Or is that thing a Martian minus sign? Of course. Look. A plus sign is a hook, to hang things together. A minus sign is a knife, to cut something off from something. See, the little loop is the handle and the long pointed loop is the blade. Stylized, of course, but that's what it is. And the fourth element, Kiradavas, what's that?" "Beryllium. Atomic weight given as 9 and a hook. Actually, it's 9.02. Sid Chamberlain had been disgruntled because he couldn't get a story about the Martians having developed atomic energy. It took him a few minutes to understand the newest development, but finally it dawned on him. "Hey, you're reading that!" he cried. "You're reading Martian!" "That's right," Penrose told him. "Just reading it right off. I don't get the 2 items after the atomic weight, though. They look like the months of the Martian calendar. What ought they to be, Mort?" Tranter hesitated. "Well, the next information after the atomic weight ought to be the period and group numbers. But those are words. What would be the numbers for the first one, hydrogen?" "Period 1, group 1. 1 electron shell, 1 electron in the outer shell," Tranter told her. "Helium's period 1, too, but it has the outer, only, electron shell full, so it's in the group of inert elements." Trav. Trav's the first month of the year. And helium's Trav. Yenth is the 8th month. The inert elements would be called group 8, yes. And the third element, lithium, is period 2, group 1. That check? It certainly does. Sam, Trav. Sam's the 2nd month. What's the first element in period 3? Sodium, number 11. That's right. It's Crav, Trav. Why, the names of the months are simply numbers, 1 to 10, spelled out. Doma's the 5th month. That was your first Martian word, Martha, Penrose told her. The word for 5. And if Davas is the word for metal, and Sornhulva is chemistry and or physics, I'll bet Tadavas Sornhulva is literally translated as of metal, matter knowledge. Metallurgy, in other words. I wonder what Mastharnorvad means. It surprised her that, after so long and with so much happening in the meantime, he could remember that. Something like journal or review or maybe quarterly.